Failed because it had to do with issues bordering on the provisions of the Constitution.
Okay.
And then we are now saddled with the responsibility of ascertaining to its worth and value whether political issues can be resolved constitutionally. Yes. But can constitutional issues be resolved politically? No. Because the provisions are there.
Chief Oguche, sorry to interrupt you. There have been party problems taken to court. Who is the chairman of the party? Who is this one of the party? And the court says, go home and resolve your problem according to your party constitution.
That's for political parties. I'm talking about constitutional documents or organic documents such as the 1999 Constitution.
Okay.
If a constitution says this is black, you and I cannot go and settle and say you and I have agreed that this thing will no longer be black, but it is white. The Constitution must be wrong in its choice of color. But you see, its provisions cannot be circumvented. Constitutional provisions are sacred. They are sacrosanct. And no matter how we try to disrespect it and disobey it, particularly the national members of the National Assembly, they should understand, that when certain actions are taken and they impugn on the sacrosanctity of the Constitution, it even affects them directly. For instance, now they want people to submit memoranda because they want an amendment of the Constitution. But people are reminding them that you sat on yourselves, by yourselves, and allowed the president to remove democratic structures in Rivers State, which is very, very antithetical to constitutional provisions.
That's right.
It's even aberrational of the Constitution. Now, how are we sure that you come and do all this jamboree with you, and at the end of the day, you still hold the Constitution to the realm of that respect and dignity that it deserves? As far as I understand, a lot of those matters bordering on the feud between Mr. Wike and the governor, they touch on the provisions of the law, and you cannot circumvent them. I don't know to the extent it is settled whether the issue of defection has been taken care of. Was it taken care of by the decision of the Supreme Court? But I understand that some of the cases, substantive cases on the defection, are pending in some courts.
Yeah.
The other day, the chief judge of the Federal High Court had to transfer some of them from the Rivers jurisdiction, the Rivers division of the court to the Abuja division.
To Abuja, yeah.
There are others pending in different other areas, even in international courts. So what are we going to talk about that? Are they going to take any resolution on those matters that are still pending? So whatever is the controversy around it is that there's nothing anybody can do by way of agreement in the interest of peace. By the way, you cannot sacrifice peace. Peace. You cannot sacrifice peace for anything, I agree. But in doing that, you must not place political expediency above the provisions of the Constitution. There's nothing that can cause anybody to give the Constitution, treat it with a wave of the hand as if it is non-existent and maybe something that should not even be considered at all by anybody. So to what extent are these resolutions going to not affect the provisions of the Constitution in those areas, in those very particular areas where they touch on? If they conform with the provisions of the Constitution, no problem about that. But if you do anything to constrict the political governance space of the governor, then of course it is antithetical to the Constitution. It is even aberrational of the Constitution.
Okay, so responding to cases in court, right? I can speak to that because usually where there's a pattern, you can make predictions. What happens a lot of times with these resolutions is they tell both parties to withdraw any cases they have in courts. So if those cases are from any of those parties, you suddenly just realize that it's no longer in a court. But for the cases that were by civil society organizations, most times it's not very easy to tell them because if we follow the way things should be...
But you cannot go ahead of them to begin to make resolutions on those subject matter of the case. The thing is that we have to understand how these things work. The system is not as straightforward as it is. Though the Supreme Court had made it a lot easier for Tinubu to impose a state of emergency and remove democratic structures in Rivers State. But people are still challenging the decision of that court.
Yeah, lots of cases.
There are cases pending in international court. So we'll deal within the ambit. And some of those cases are not just because of any of the individual gladiators or persons who are in the controversy, but it's just to streamline the law, to set a good precedent. For instance, we have the case of the president unilaterally on its own, ever before the National Assembly gave the approval, imposing a junta regime in the state. How do you describe that? Whatever name you want me to call it, that's what it is.
Well, sole administrator is softer.
Well. What is that ever envisaged under the provisions of the Constitution? It is not within the contemplation of the Constitution, no matter how anybody wants to describe it.
Not a good example, but there's precedence. Obasanjo did it.
No, whatever precedent there is, we look at it from the point of view of democratic traditions and democratic cultures.
Chief Oguche,
remember Slobodan Milosevic? You know him? He used to be of Kosovo. He was the strong man that was upturning systems all around the old Yugoslavia. And he was involved in both those areas within that environment, those very, very hectic times. And there was a Yugoslavia tribunal that was set up by the United Nations, and they found him guilty because he was then upturning democratic systems here and there, taking over and planting his people there. The tribunal described it as a persecution of the people.
I understand.
And that's essentially what state capture is all about. That's what hijack of state resources is all about. And they are all internationally recognized crimes. So that we are done with our own system here does not mean that everything is all good and all fine. That people will now begin to sit down, begin to dictate terms on how governance or the direction of governance or how it should go. Or who should be who and who should be what.
That is the problem with a bad example, right?
Yes.
Because nonetheless, it is an example. And there is something that happens when a person does something that has been done before, regardless of ethics, morality. If somebody has perpetuated something before, if I'm not the trailblazer, if I'm the second person doing it, I'm emboldened by the fact that it has been done before.
You will not call what Obasanjo did as precedence because everybody challenged. We were all condemned.
It was challenged, but it was done. He declared state of emergency, and he also appointed sole administrator.
Time, when we are still at the teaching level of our democratic journey, does not mean that it can be applied now and seen to be valid.
I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying that might be what emboldens the president today.
Whatever emboldens him, it must have been advised. They have a Ministry of Justice. They have lawyers. The Attorney General of the Federation. No matter how they advise him, the average lawyer knows very well that within the centrifugality of a federal system, as diverse groups are doing this and doing that, there's the center, there's the component units and what have you. And there's a democratic culture entrenched therein and a constitutional framework. There's nothing you can do to disrupt the democratic system within a particular part of the federation. If you do that, it's abrupt invasion of constitutional rights. And like I said, the International Court of Justice also said that it amounts to persecution of the population because it is the population that puts somebody there that has the right to remove him, either by way of impeachment or by way of any other way, as provided under the Constitution. And even if it is an appointment, our law does not allow that somebody that does not put somebody on a position does not allow him to remove him. Our Interpretation Act says that it is only the person that appoints you, only the person that elects you, that can remove you. So we are now dealing here with a state of affairs that's neither here nor there. Sort of dangling between irreconciliables. And now it's a very difficult period to think about having that. And apparently that's why the FCT minister has said that they should ask the governor, because he will not have answers to all the questions concerning all this.
True. So we're waiting, hoping, and of course asking the governor. Hopefully we get answers. Well, unfortunately, time is not a luxury I can afford, and I obviously have to apologize for that. So when you call, you'll have just about 60 seconds to give your responses. My question is, do you feel entitled to the terms and conditions of the Wike-Fubara resolution, do you feel entitled to those terms and conditions? Do you feel that you must know? You consider it a right or a privilege? 0817-923-0002, 0817-923-0003. WhatsApp is 080-903-06-416. Greetings, Sam and Chief Oguche, my senior friend. I think our judicial system allows out-of-court settlement. I think the previous 8 peace points, as read by Sam, were anchored on out-of-court settlement, which would have granted the right for discussion, but the governor blew it away. I think the governor should allow wisdom guard his path next time and not allow men of political melancholy push him into engaging in lawlessness and illegalities. Emmy Fiahara says. Chima calls from NT Road. Hello. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Sam.
Good evening. Can you do it in 1 minute?
Yes, Mr. Sam.
All right.
I think we are entitled to know whatever be the truth that have reached between the governor and the FCC minister.
Okay.
And FCC minister cannot say he does not owe anybody any explanation. Because at the event of this very issue, he has been going around, he has been the one talking, shouting on top of his voice and the rest of them. Now that the terms and conditions is not in his favor, he doesn't want anybody to know. So we are entitled to it. We get to know because we are the mostly affected right now. During the last time, people were sharing, telling us how faith have overtaken River State. Why? Because of all these things. So we are entitled to know whatever be the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shima. Gospar from Rumudara. Good evening, Gospar.
Yes. Good evening, my brother Sam.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Ayiba Gospar.
Okay.
Sam, I listened to your guest attentively, the way he was talking and explaining and also criticizing the suspension of Governor Sim in Rivers State, that it was not constitutional and that it has never happened before. Even when you made mention of the one that happened during Obasanjo's era, he said that one is not a precedent. Sam, the problem I have with some of the leaders we have in Nigeria is insincerity. Before Sim was suspended, Sam, the Supreme Court has suspended Sim before Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president of Nigeria, suspended Sim.
Suspended Sim?
The state of emergency that was declared in Rivers State was already a judgment in the Supreme Court.
No, it was not.
Supreme Court said that there was no government in Rivers State.
Yes, that's what he said, but it never suggested a state of emergency.
Sam, if you should allow that disobedience and disregard of the rule of law and the Constitution to thrive in Rivers State, what then should happen in other states?
It does not translate to a state of emergency. And I say this authoritatively because I studied the certified copy of the Supreme Court. It did not suggest in any way.
Sam, if it is not translate to a state of emergency, what if all the threats and all whatnot that was happening in Rivers State was allowed to be carried out?
Gospar, I don't have an answer to that question, but I'm responding to what you said, that the Supreme Court had first suspended the governor. It did not.
What I'm saying in essence was that the Supreme Court already said that there was no government in Rivers State.
Yes, it did say that, but it did not suspend the governor.
Well, Sam, it is the Supreme Court that gave credence or leeway to the president to declare state of emergency in Rivers State.
Okay, thank you, Gospar. Well, that's way beyond 1 minute. I get the point you're making, but no, that's not it. We have to be very careful as to what we allow to work on this platform. But the Supreme Court did not suspend the governor.
No,
that's very clear.
Never made such pronouncements.
Hello, Cookie Gam. Good evening.
Sam, good evening.
Good evening.
Sam, please, I want to ask Chief Oguche something before. I want to ask Chief Oguche. This today makes Governor Wike 28 media charge between January and now. Today making 28 media charge. is there any minister that have started the media chair for 28 times in 6 months? Number 2, Mr. Oguche, you're a lawyer, so we didn't know. Is there any king that has ruled forever in his lifetime? That's my number 3 question again. Because if 3 is far from 3, Mogigo jump am. What I want to say this night, because go back on this week, has ruled River State 8 years. I don't know how to call it. All his every power, he shut down, closed down, break houses. Nobody challenge him. Nobody gave him condition to rule River State. He ruled at his own will. He lock store, break shop, break houses, do this one, close road. People don't pay him for 8 years. What happened now that this guy is ruling for this one just 2 years and he's paying him?
Thank you very much.
He has made his point.
Yeah, he did make his point. Those questions were heading towards the point he wanted to make. Ifeanyi from Ada George.
Good evening, Sam.
Good evening.
Sir, I've been meaning to tell you this. I listened to your guest on radio, and he's making a lot of sense. Do you know that if the Supreme Court, if its judgment had gone the other way, there would still have been some reasons to justify that judgment? What I'm trying to say is this. Our judiciary has a way of confusing the law. Do you know that if the judiciary had said that those guys defected had automatically lost their seat, do you know that it would have still been logical in the law? A lot of legal luminary that you people brought to your studio before that judgment, they were all saying exactly the same thing, that what those guys did was wrong and they have automatically lost their seat. And I think whatever it is that's happening in Rivers State now, judiciary is to be blamed. They have never been consistent in their rule. Thank you very much, Sam.
All right, thank you, Fine. That's exactly a minute. Thank you for using the time wisely. JJ from Rumigbo, good evening.
Yeah, Sam, good evening, and good evening to the barrister in the studio. I greet you, sir.
Thank you very much, JJ. Long time no see.
Sam, ordinarily I wanted to listen, but because of some few comments, I have to call in. What the Supreme Court said was that the governor needs to represent the budget, and because he's been spending, don't forget that there are 2 assemblies as are there, and the other assembly passed the budget. Now that Amewule and his group was recognized, they go and represent the budget. Meanwhile, that is not to release money to River State. Is that what people call emergency that Supreme Court declared? All they would have done is to represent this budget to Martin Amewule and his people then they start releasing money. So does that qualify for emergency? And why people are getting that information is the defense. You know, the Supreme Court. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
The president said this is based on the Supreme Court judgment and all those. For me, it has no connection at all, because the Supreme Court gave that judgment and also gave a remedy, which would have been present this document to this assembly, and that would have been all. But you have the case of lockout and all those put together. So I think, I don't know, overhandedness and all those put together. But what do I know? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, Chief Oguche, you've heard the responses and reactions.
There's also that relief granted by Omoto show that restraining restraining who was that from the National Assembly from taking over the affairs of the House of Assembly, and that was also one of the decisions that the Supreme Court affirmed. Now we see ourselves disobeying the law, because today who is hearing the budget? Is it the River State House of Assembly or the National Assembly?
The National.
So they are disobeying the order of a court of competent jurisdiction. So it is simply that politicians want to pick and choose between which one to obey and which one to disobey.
They would use the emergency rule as the defense for that. Things are not normal in River State. So under these unique circumstances...
By my own assessment of the law, I think every democratic system is still in place. So the usurpation of their functions does not mean that they do not exist. I understand that the judge had already given a decision sometime that there's no office of the Attorney General of Rivers State. I've not looked at that decision anyway, but I think it's a food for thought to me. I'll look for it, search for it, and look at it and note the implications of such decision.
All right, Chief, we are down to final minutes. What should we expect moving forward? What kind of demand should we make of the governor? Since he's the one that the people can ask, they voted for him. What should people expect? What should they ask for?
Well, I wonder how people would want to connect with him in that manner anymore, in the sense of the way he went about seeking the elusive peace that has become something like a monster between him, because he sees himself lying in between a deep blue sea and the Dead Sea for that matter, and a monster. A whole lot of things have gone, but whatever they discuss, anything that has to do with governance, must have the approval of the people. Every reconciliation that touches on the running of the state of affairs of Rivers State and political appointments, or whether the governor should go for another second term or not, is not something that can be finalized between Wike, Tinubu, and Fubara. They must surely be put to vote. And I want to make a caveat here, because I think we have gotten to this stage where we have to begin to look for, particularly at this era when they are seeking for amendments of the Constitution, that the political elites should consider inserting a provision validating political godfatherism, so that we can...
In the Constitution,
so that we understand how the rules are.
No, but that can't be the solution. That cannot be the solution.
What do you expect me to say?
No,
look at the state of affairs we have in Rivers State. Absurd as it is, some people are claiming validity. Some people are saying that it is the proper thing, it's the right thing. Even the victim himself.
No. Chief Oguche, that's a defeatist approach, right?
What do we do?
It just cannot. No, come on.
We are totally emasculated. We are pluralized, and there's nothing the population can do.
I'm sure.
So that we don't begin to see upheavals and disruptions and problems and catastrophes from left, right, and center.
If you think
let us insert a provision for godfatherism and create the rules, so that anybody that becomes a governor or becomes a local government chairman or even the president to know what the rules are.
If you think we have problems now, if godfatherism is captured in the Constitution, we're going to have chaos. Catastrophe. Like, you can't handle the tsunami that will come from that.
I agree with you.
Right? But thank you, Chief Oguche. It's always wonderful doing this with you.
Thank you.
Well, this is where we wrap up this conversation. We have the news update coming up at 5. After that, we're talking about the coalition. It seems to be what everyone is interested in, and there's a lot to unpack from there. Stay with us.